Okay, we're going to put in some more darks. I'm going to go in with Payne's Blue Gray again. And work on her eyes. I'm going to clean this up because I don't want the purple. So to me, what we've got on here is really kind of the underpainting, even though there is color also, because now everything, for me, everything going forward is going to be detail. So I'm going to, I want to make that eyelid more relaxed, so, and also notice that, you know, it kind of comes down. I want it to cover part of her eye. And I'm keeping that line really soft. Kind of noticing where her lashes are. Over there, but not drawing lashes. I also like to create a deep eyelid, so I'm going to turn my paper around just because it helps with how I blend the paint. And I'm going to take my Payne's Blue Gray and I'm going to go above that eyelid, and I'm going to come back in with a wet brush and soften it. But that gives it a deeper, makes it deeper. Also going to look at her pupil. And then notice that the line around her eye isn't a full circle, so there isn't, you know, that line around her eye doesn't go all the way around. So I use just a teeny bit of Payne's Blue Gray on my brush and did a really fine line there. what I like to do is put the color down, blend it so it softens it, and then come back and do darker on top of it like we did there. So just working on the eye. Sorry if you can hear my contractor out there. Whoa! Alright, and so it's also dark, you know, in the nostrils, so sometimes when you start getting these details in is when the picture really starts coming to life. And I'm going to do a little bit of that Payne's blue-gray now in the eyebrow. Make those eyebrows darker. This is where I start to get a more dramatic effect on my paintings. So again, not making it a solid line, leaving some of the layers from before. Alright, work on the other eye now. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to make that lid over the eye darker. There's a lot more shadow on this side. And I've got some orange there, so I'm going to try hard not to activate that. Sometimes to get some of these lines, like what I'm doing right now, I'm using my brush pretty dry. So I get it, clean it off, dry it off, and then come back and put in that line. I want a little bit more shadow over here. And a little bit on the eyebrow. Oops. We're also going to go back in and make this shadow a little bit darker. I'm actually going to switch back to my large brush, my 20. And you can see it's a little bit darker around the nose. Right there, a little bit darker around the nose than the rest of the... And my shadow's not exactly right in the image. There's a little bit more coverage on the eye. So I'm going to try to get a little bit of that, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. Okay, and since we're going to continue to work with our bringing out the shadows. I'm going to carefully turn this around, and I'm going to work on the shadow on the upper lip. So there's some already there. I want a little bit more within that. I'm not going to try to cover it up. I'm going to try not to cover it up. little bit here. So it's super delicate at some point. All right, a little bit more here. And then in that corner of her mouth, it's pretty dark right there. And some of those points where the two lips come together. So all these little tiny details of shadow really start to bring it out. It's even a little bit shadow here under the nose, and there's a lot right here. And I don't really want it to look like a line, so I'm going to try to soften that up a little bit. I just don't want it to look like I'm outlining. And I want this a little bit darker, so as things dry you can add a little bit more in. And I'm going to go back under the chin. It's a little bit darker on this side. And then there is some dark spots around here. And around the top of the hat. I'm trying to keep that dark line separate from the color I have in the forehead, so that it's kind of sitting above. And then there's some dark over here, so I'm going to put that in here, a little bit darker over here. That was a little bit of a gap in the side of her head. Not her head, her hat. So getting that in there. And then she's got a little bit around the chin, or her cheek right there. And I'll probably go back in and make that a little bit darker when it dries. Let's see, let's look at the ears this way. I'm just going to notice touch points. So there's like here, I'm just going to put some shadow where different points meet. So how it meets here. And I'm just making it soft. You might also notice if is the one side of the ear darker than the other at all. It's kind of hard to tell because it's in full shadow in the picture. But what there is this pink satin is inset to the fluff, so the fluff is higher than the pink satin. So I'm going to do a little bit of some outlining of that satin to get a little bit more emphasis on the inset of that. I'm doing it mostly at the top part of the ears. Not necessarily in the center. This is really light, and I want to kind of keep that if I can. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing to this next ear. I am going to pay attention to where it's light here and dark here, so I'm not going to put some shadow on that side, just on this side. And then again in the ears. I kind of went out of the line here, so I'm going to follow that where I went with that pink color. And noticing that fold, so it's kind of, you know, more shadow here. Probably have to come in and do that again because I want that line a little bit harder. We'll see. Okay, and it's a little bit dark right there on the top of her hat, so I am going to do a line of shadow here. And I'm going to do a dark line all the way around this part, because it is darker. Kind of noticing where some of those lines, wrinkle lines or fold lines, come in. And it's pretty dark under her neck, so I'm going to make that dark shadow here. To help that the light stand out on the hat. Alright, and when we come back we will move on to another color.